there, welcome back to another show. Today I'm going to talk about The Tree of Life, Terrence Malick, which I'm almost finished doing Terrence Malick films because I've only got to the Wonder left and I think I've covered everything. So it's good and bad. I should say, if you're upside down, you see them walking forward, and this one is walking ahead, meeting the sky, almost like the Hollow Earth. The Godzilla movie. But yes, I couldn't resist that joke. But yeah, this is the Criterion version. You have both cuts in this version, the longer cut and the theatrical cut. You get a nice little booklet here as well, which is very nice. Which I've turned upside down, of course, because I'm stupid. So, yep. What can we say? I'm a big dummy sometimes. Right, so Tree of Life is a film that came out in like 2010, 2011. It did well at Cannes, it did well everywhere, even before it was released, so it was viewed as like a great... I'm still doing this wrong. This is wonderful, isn't it? Watch me be an idiot for a while. Right, so it did well at Cannes, it won awards, it did well overall, everywhere, it was well received. It was the last Malick film until like Hidden Life that get really good reviews. After this, there was kind of a backlash against Malick for some reason. It just was like, he'd been praised so often that I think it was just a case of it's his turn to get some backlash, and he did some more experimental films before he went back to some more narrative-based stuff with Hidden Life. The critics liked that a lot more. So it was like the end of his wave of getting adored by the critics before it was like, oh, what's he doing now? This is weird. Why is he doing this way? And even though To the Wonder, Night of Cups and Song to Song are all terrific films, he kind of went through a phase after this film of being slated. This film, though, was exempt. It got some criticisms because of certain sequences they said didn't fit in with the rest of the film, which was the scene going through from the beginning of time to life as we are now. So there's a bit like that. It's like, what is that going to do with the rest of the film? Because the rest of the film is a family drama set in Texas. And it actually does feel more as a whole in the extended version. I'm going to say right off, I much prefer the extended version of this film to the theatrical cut. Theatrical cut for me always was like the film that never quite came together for Malick. I was always confused why it was so praised compared to some of his other films that he followed this one with, because I thought they were stronger than this one. Seeing the extended version on the Criterion disc changed my mind a little bit, because the things I didn't like in the theatrical version all made sense in the extended version. And it just felt like it was a film that had been cut down a little bit too much, at least for me. For other people it was fine, the length of his act, they didn't need the extended version, but for me, there were certain things that were missing. And like, there were certain things for me that was like problems in the theatrical version. Like Brad Pitt as the father in the theatrical version didn't work for me. It felt a bit mannered, the performance. In the extended version, the character and the performance works a lot better because you get a bit more context of why he is the way he is and where he fits into the rest of the story. And the performance makes sense in a way that didn't quite come together in the theatrical for me. Like, in the theatrical, it seemed a bit big at times and it felt inconsistent at times, but it makes more sense when you get the full thing. I'll start off now after rambling by explaining the story. The story basically is of a guy thinking back to an earlier time in his life when he was young, when he was a boy in Texas growing up, and his relationship with his mother and his father, as well as his relationship with two brothers, one of who died in Vietnam. And he's finding it hard to relate to life. He's feeling very much like a person who can't relate to people. Like, he's just depressed, and he's played by Sean Penn in the older version. And then you go back to who he was when he was younger, and he was a kid who was always up to mischief. He was a problem kid, as they say. He bucked authority, and he's trying to find a meaning in his life because he's a mother and a father who are very different people. And the bulk of the film takes place about his relationship with his mum and dad, basically, in Texas, and his brothers. How he's close to his middle brother, who's the one who died. And then there was a younger brother who was kind of the hanger-on of the... He was still kind of... The younger brother was still tied to his mum a little bit more. And the two other brothers were a bit more ferocious and trying different things out. But he had a bad relationship with his father because his father was tough. His father demanded respect, demanded him to do things a certain way, and was tough because he hadn't had the life he wanted. He wanted to be a musician and never got that life, became an engineer instead. And he didn't feel very fulfilled with his life, and he took it out on his family. And his mother was much more of a naive romantic person who believed in God and who was trying to do the best for her children, and who was almost a child in herself because she took their side and she cared for them more than dealing with the father. And the story is basically about the evolving relationships between all these characters, and how the character Jack, as a boy, how his relationship with his mother and father changes over time, where he starts to see that he's much more like his father than he would like to let on. And it's like how sometimes he needs a discipline because he was a bit rough and a bit... He could follow his rules and not get stopped by anybody unless there was someone in power saying, no, you can't do that. So he was a difficult child. But it's about him like remembering all this and trying to make sense of his... Like, how did his relationship with his mother kind of slowly fall away over time as he realised he was much more his father than his mother. And, like, how did the close bond he had with his mother just sort of devolve as he kind of pushed her away, as he grew up a bit and had instincts that were, you know, not the best instincts, but they were just, like, teenage boy instincts. It's kind of a phase that certain teenage boys are going to go through. They're going to be trouble for a while, and then they're going to grow out of it, and that's it. But they need to go through that phase. And the father was much more able to deal with him than the mother was. And it's like there's the complications of family life. So that's the story. That's what it is about. The difference of cuts is basically you get a much more rounded version of the parents and of a bit more of a Jack as a grown-up in the extended version. And that really makes a difference ultimately. You take a bit longer to get to each bit, but you also get a lot more detail. So you find out what's driving the mother and the father as well a lot more in the extended version. You get the idea that the mother is actually almost like she chose a way to view life and she's sticking to it. So while the children see this as idyllic, you can also see why it's frustrating for the father to deal with sometimes, and that comes across a lot more in the theatrical version. She sees much more of angelic. In this version, it's much more of a balanced thing of, yes, she's a very kind, decent person, but there are problems with that sometimes. Like, she can't deal with the rambunctions of boys and their nature and what they really are sometimes. She can't deal with that. It's not part of her worldview. Or she can understand it happens, but she doesn't know how to deal with it. The father does know how to deal with it. And you get a lot more about the Brad Pitt's father, like who he is, why he's the way he is, and you get a little bit more about how he alienates people all the time, how he just can't get out of his own way, ever. He's trying to prove he's right, but everything, and he always ends up proving other people right about him, like he's a difficult person. And it's a much more nuanced performance in the extended version. You get a lot more of like in the theatrical, he's much more dickish. It appears it's almost like you're seeing him from the outside perspective of what the children see. In the extended version, you get a bit more of the inside of him and what he's about and why he acts certain ways. And it's almost like someone who's trying to be a father and try to he's not been trained to do this, so he's making it up as he goes along. And he has some instincts that work well and other instincts that don't work well, just like any parent ever. There's some things you're good at, things you're bad at, and if you're dealing with children, that mix is going to come across to how you deal with them. It's the same with the mother, as she's saying good things that means she's emotionally available to them, but there's other things she's not good at dealing with them. And you get a sense of who these are both like broken people in different ways, difficult people. The marriage is very difficult for them to deal with, and there's things in the theatrical that aren't resolved, but are in the extended. Like the idea that neither of them can deal with the Jack character, the central character. He ends up being sent away to private school. So you get much more of a sense in this one that the Brad Pitt father character does care about his children, really does care about them. It's just his way of expressing it is very difficult at times. But he is doing his best for them. He is trying to give them ways to survive in the world. It's just sometimes you should give them a hug, a bit more. And it's also dealing with things you start to develop it yourself, some things you can't do that you'd like to be able to do, like he tends the father character would like to be able to express himself more with his children, but he can't. And that causes anger and frustration and he takes out in them. He has an artistic side which he shares with the middle son. The middle son plays the guitar and Brad Pitt's character plays the piano and the organ at church. And like that's his expression of, but he can make a living out of it. But there are things he can do that are non-verbal that express what he feels. But when it comes to verbal communication, he's not good at it. And you just get much more of a sense of this, a guy who's broken and he's doing the best he can. And he's the best person who understands he's making mistakes. In the theatrical, you don't always get the impression he understands he's making mistakes. In the extended version, you get a sense of, he knows he's making mistakes. He's still trying though. And he becomes a more human character. And the performance is a lot better just because there's certain things that make sense in the longer version that are missing in theatrical that makes it feel incomplete. So that's a film with lots of newcomers. The only two established people when the film was made was Sean Penn, who was basically in the beginning and the end, so he's only in it for a short time. And he was a bit annoyed because some of his stuff got cut because he shot a lot more. So you get a bit more in the longer version. But to be fair, actually, you don't need that much. You get an idea of who he is and what he is. I mean, Penn was actually done in by his own performance because you got it. So you didn't need that much of it. You got what he was about. You didn't need to elaborate that much. He defined what the character was. And I think it was like Malick was pretty much on cue there of like, okay, we got that, now we need to see where that came from. The other person was obviously Brad Pitt, who was the producer of it before he became a star. I mean, originally it was meant to be Heath Ledger and he died, so Brad Pitt ended up taking over the part. But he is older than everyone else, and that becomes a weird thing. Is like it's not like two people in their late 20s, early 30s dealing with these children. It's actually one person who's in their 40s dealing with children. So it gives a different take. But it still works in the longer version. There's two other actors who came through this film and got careers. I mean, Jessica Chastain was basically just came from this film and became an established actress pretty much from this film. Was the thing that it's sort of like Jim Caviezel in The Thin Red Line. She'd been around before, but this film was the thing that was the kind of, like showing, oh, this person's got a lot of talent, let's start using them and stuff. And so she started to get parts and started to build up her career very quickly. because it was just like, obviously this is a talent, and Malick saw it and he put it in the film, and everyone else could see it, so instantly she got other parts. Ty Sheridan, who was the youngest child in this one, who, fun enough, had the least to do of all three children, was the child actor who came through this one and had a career, because he started to work with other directors in Texas area and then into Hollywood films as well. And he was at Cyclops and some of the X-Men films. He was Ready Player One, and he's done a lot of indie films too. He was in a Paul Schrader film with Oscar Isaac. So I mean, he's built up his career. Some films better than others, but he's built a career up as well. And the funny thing is, of the three actors playing child, he was the one that looked least likely to go anywhere. The one you'd have bet on would have been when the kid playing the older son, Jack. And I don't ever heard from him again. So this is a film that made careers, and it really works. But to be honest, before I rewatched it and watched the extended version, I would probably say this is my least favourite Malick film. Not because it was bad, it was just like I never connected with it. It was like, I liked certain bits. I loved the stuff with the universe expanding, which was expanded into Voyage of Time, or Voyage in Time, that Malick made, which is, I've done a video on. That was wonderful. So that was wonderful. I thought a lot of the stuff with the kids was wonderful, but it just felt like there was things missing. Like, I couldn't connect with it before. I never quite understood the ending, even though it was beautiful. In this one, it feels a lot more like everything's there. It's looking at faith, and it's looking at what is faith and what do you believe, but also looking at the science that led you to this as well. So it's like, is there something beyond this life, or is it just this life? What are your beliefs, and how do you connect with other people? Like, connecting with other people is the thing that gets you through the isolation of life and how cold and empty life can be. So it feels much more like a cohesive story in the extended version. Like, the idea of it's not like faith versus science. It's much more like, how does faith and how does your interaction with people help you deal with the scientific facts of living a life, and what's come before you, what's going to come after you. And the idea of, it's the memories of this guy who's trying to, he lost his brother when his brother was young, who he was close to, and he also didn't get that much of a chance to deal with him because he was sent to boarding school because of his own actions, which isn't in the theatrical cut. And how he's isolated, and how he starts to rebond with people, how he starts to rebond with his past, and the memory of his past, the memory of who he knew and who was important to him, and the sense of him healing, really, so he can become something useful to his family, which you see happened with his father and his mother in the extended version as well, where Pitt's character slowly makes peace with his own problems to be. Pitt's character goes away for 3 months where the kids run wild. When he comes back, he starts to make an effort to actually deal with his problems a bit more and realise it's not just everyone else's fault, it's his. And it's like this kind of sequence at the end of Sean Penn's character coming to terms with his past is his version of doing that. In the same way, Justine's character has to learn to deal with life and loss and having to make sacrifices for her family. It's everyone's version of how to deal with your responsibilities to other people when faced with the actual isolation of human nature and human contact, and how brittle it is and how you can destroy it. It's like trying to make contact and faith within those contacts. So it makes more sense in this version, actually. It just feels more cohesive in the extended version. Although Malick is keen to point out it's not a director's cut. He's very happy with the theatrical cut as well. This is just another cut, which I happen to prefer. Maybe other people got that from the theatrical cut, but I didn't. So I needed the longer cut to figure out the film a little bit more. But yeah, it's a wonderful film. But I would definitely recommend, even though the second cut's only 2 hours 20 and the other cut's like just over 3 hours. But to me, actually, the longer cut felt shorter. It just felt that the scenes in there that made the pacing just feel more natural. So I never really noticed the time go by with the Tree of Life extended version. But I'm that way with films. If films work, I don't really notice the time. So that's me on Tree of Life. Hopefully my rambling made some sort of sense. This is a very hard film to talk about. It wanders all over the place in some ways, even though there is a kind of focus to it. And I've only covered one area of it. There's tons of areas you can cover just from how they use photography, how they use the memories of the past, and all the different incidents that happen through childhood that most directors are very sentimental about. And this film is much more, yeah, kids can be awful and kids can be wonderful. It's the full gamut of what makes up a childhood experience in this film, good and bad. But yeah, go watch it. It's wonderful. That's me for now. Bye.